My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Svesangran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to continue with the science of Kundalini meditation. Particularly, I want to spend some time, the next few satsang, on what happens to our brain and what happens to our mind when we meditate. When we practice yoga, what happens to the brain? And this is something that I've been thinking about for a very, very long time, practicing Mahan's meditation for more than 40 over years. And given that I have had a chance to spend some time in research, uh, I know something was happening as I was practicing meditation. Things were more clearer, things were more, um, you know, uh, calmer, cooler over the years. And I didn't want to take it as a placebo effect, in the sense that maybe it's just imagination. So, but I read Mahan's books. I read many scriptures. I read other people who are meditating, and I was experiencing it, and I was always asking this question: Is it real or not? And as I have been exposed to research, I always say, okay, let's test this out to see what is happening in the brain when we practice meditation. I am feeling something. I am experiencing something. Things were more clearer than before. I've become more patient, and so something must be happening physiologically in my brain. And that obviously has got an impact on my software called the mind. It has also got an impact on the software called the intellect, because now the intellect can think about the mind becomes calmer. There's a sense of clarity. When the mind is calm and there's a sense of clarity, uh, I started getting some creative ideas. My intellect became more sharper. The curiosity became more intense. So these things were manifesting for many years, and I happened to be in a university environment, in a research environment that really helped me in my own research work to help me complete many things. And I remember Swamiji saying that you practice this meditation, you read my book, and you will understand the secrets of this universe. Obviously, in the beginning, I just took it by trust as a bhakti to the Guru, but I held on to it and I continued. And I found some really fascinating things. And I want to show you that some of the things that were happening in the brain when you meditate, there were many people documenting this. Obviously, before, people are documenting it in scriptures and all kinds of explanation in a very poetic way. But then there were also scientists like me practicing meditation and started asking this question: what is happening in our brain? And they started putting, and some of them were neuroscientists, some of them were, you know, psychologists and so on. And they was so I used this resources I have to start searching for what was happening. And I stumbled across some of the top scholars in the field. They themselves were questioning whether this is real or not. Some of them went to India, some of them went to many places. They started practicing. I mean, they were in the part of in the stages of their lives that they were asking many questions. And they stumbled across this and they put it through the laboratories, put it through the practice, and they started writing about this. And exactly the same experiences that I was experiencing, they were experiencing it. And they documented in a scientific way what is happening in the brain. And I'm going to show you step by step that experiences that other saints and sages and other scientific scholars and scientific meditators were doing, which I was also starting to experience. So I'm going to link this Mahan's meditational practice to the scientific explanation of why the feelings and the experiences were there. Mahan talked about it. Now I can show the link between what he's talking about and how it is, help people unravel the secret, the mystery, life, mystery of the self, mystery of the universe. So I want to take you through this journey of really fun and exploration, that it is a discovery of our own self. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of technical part. I'm going to give you some references for you to, there's a links for you to read a little bit more. Some of them are very technical, but I'm going to make it very simple with some pictures for you. Now, when I covered this on when we meditate, there are structural changes that are happening in the brain that has got an impact on our personality. And so I'm going to explain that step by step. And then once I cover the 10 regions of our brain that goes through transformation, I'm going to then show you how Mahan's meditation, the first stage, what part of the brain that is impacted and what kind of feelings you're getting. When you practice second stage, what kind of experiences you're getting and why you're getting that experience. And the third stage, when you practice this, what were the experiences? And once you master this first three stages, when you intensify the practice, what are the structural changes that happens in the brain and how the software called mind starts interfacing with the changes that are happening. It gets into a much more subtler frequency that starts revealing secrets that no ordinary people will get. So this is that journey that I want to take you through. But bear with me, that at the end of when that end is going to be, that when you go through this, when you practice this, you will see that the discovery of your own self. So here it is. So I'm going to show you what happens, at least for me. There are many meditational practices. I'm going to tell you that the Kundalini practice that Mahan has taught me and how it has helped me understand the changes that are happening in my brain, in my mind, and in my personality, and also in my way of life and the way I think about things in this world. It may be varying from people to people. I'm just going to share it with you, my journey, and hopefully when you practice, you'll be able to document your journey. So here it is. So we all have body, we have a brain, we have a software called mind, we have a software called intellect, and these are important apparatus for us to function in this material universe. So there is an integral part of, in our brain, what I call the circuit systems. In every house, you have electrical circuit system. In this body, we have something called neurotransmitters. These are electrical messages or chemical messages that relay information between the cells, right? It's going to sound like a scientific, biological study, and you're going to experience, you're going to see this. So this chemical messenger that relays information between the different nerve cells, right? We all have that. Every one of us, nature's blessed us with this. And it looks something like this, where we have, various connectivity. If you see it under a CT scan, you would see something like this, right? And you can download this. Actually, there's a lot of, you see a lot of references that you can actually download and read a little bit more. And these are some of my own reference materials that over the years that I've managed to accumulate, try to make sense of this great Mahan's teachings and meditation, how it is changing our way of life, at least for me. This is what our brain looks like, have a branch. These are all the neurotransmitters that are showing up when we look in our CT scan. So whenever people have a blockage in the brain, when they put through the scan, it'll tell you exactly where the blockage is, where the hemorrhage is, and so on. And the doctors will then go in and do the surgery, if at all they can get there, right? So our brain, the neurotransmitters look something like this. And why this is very important, because you'll see that when we meditate, something happens to these neurotransmitters. So just to come back to a little bit more, what does that mean? When you break it down, it looks something like a worm like this. At the end of the worm, you have something called dendrites, which is actually kind of a tentacles. And then there's something called myelin, the sheet. This is very important. I'll come back to why this is very important in the aging process. Then you have another set of tentacles. See, what happens is that this is the circuit that actually transmits information. So this sheet called myelin, as we grow older, it's like in your wires, you have the coating outside. Now, if we don't exercise, if we don't meditate, if we don't eat nutritious food, you see that sheet, that myelin starts decaying. When it starts decaying, that information flow, there's leakage of that information. Right? It's like a wire that is, when the surface, the plastic surface is broken, it starts short circuiting everywhere. This happens because as we age, that myelin sheets gives way. This is why it's very important to keep our brain, our activity going, right? Eating healthily, exercising. I've spoken about this earlier. All the things that we need to do to keep our neurotransmitters circuits working really well. Reading intensively. I always say introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. It reinforces this connectivity, right? So when we practice meditation, right, you see many people who have neurological disease or neurological disorder is related to the neurotransmitters, very low level of this neurotransmitter called GABA. Because over time, it declines. And you see that when people age, they have forgetfulness, there's mood swings, there is depression, and even more severe things could come, Alzheimer's and all the other things. So you see that it leads to anxiety attacks and so on. So it is shown that when we practice meditation, when we have that positive attitude, when we wake up in the morning, we say, okay, we do our meditation, we read, reflect, be inspirational, go for our walks, play with our dogs, and so on. So when we do those things, you see that the brain, as we age, obviously it's going to decline because that is part and parcel of the biology of the body. But when we do all these activities, it's like exercising our brain, right? And you see that this is what the connectivity looks like. And you can download this articles, right? It shows the firing of the brain. And when we use our brain intensively, when you sit down and vegetate in front of the TV, right? You will see that your hormone levels, your connectivity starts declining, and you start getting all kinds of emotional turbulence. So I always tell people who are aging, get up and do things. Get up and you may be retired or you may go and serve, go and do things. Because if you don't use it, you're going to lose it, right? So this is shown in many, many, many studies. But I have seen people meditating and doing community work. They are even 60, 70, 80 years old, 90 years old, still very active. The mind is alert. But I've seen people who are 50s and the 60s stay home and vegetate and watch TV and watch YouTube, declining completely, right? So it is very important to keep active, very important to be alert, very important to do puzzles, keeping the brain going, introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. There are many studies that show this. The highest death rate happens when people retire and they have nothing else to do because the brain starts decaying at a faster rate, right? So we see that you can see this, that there's a source that I put there which talks about this gray matter. When we meditate, when the neurotransmitters are firing away, it releases neural, oxygen passes through, energy passes through, the gray matter in our brain starts expanding. But if we don't do it after the age of 22, 23, 24, you see that if we don't intensify, the gray matter starts declining, and it intensifies very quickly after 44, and then after 60, it just takes a dive if we don't use it. So it's always very important that those who are practicing meditation, those who are aging, you cannot afford not to meditate. You cannot afford not to introspect, contemplate, reflect, and meditate. Because if you don't, you are signing your death warrant, at least from the brain's perspective, right? So it is very important that we keep our mental activity. It's like exercising our brains, right? So this is one of the first aspects of meditation, is that when we meditate intensively, when we continue this, our neural pathway opens up. We channel that energy field. You see that later on, I will talk about this pathway, this highway in our brain. Sometimes we call it the highway to infinity. If this highway is blocked, if this highway, parts of the branches that I show you there starts declining, very, very clearly you will see that parts of the brain are not going to get information, flow of information. Flow of information means chemical flows. Chemical flows means blood is not going to pass through. Parts of the brains will start dying. So it is crucial that, all of us who are aging, we should be intensifying our introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. If we don't do this, the areas that are lit up there will start declining. And slowly you'll see dark spaces happening in the brain. And that means parts of your brain are starting to shut down. And when parts of the brain shut down, parts of the brains control various important organs, that too starts shutting down. So it's very important, I can't emphasize enough, that we should all be intensifying our introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation. Now I want to come back. So that is the first part of the brain. So actually you can feel this, when you're practicing this meditation. I cover later on Mahan's teachings, Mahan's meditation. When you practice, you can actually feel the flow. You can actually feel the vibration, because the more network connectivity means more electromagnetic field, and you start feeling the electromagnetic field in your brain. That means there's more highways, there's more flow. More flows means more intensity of the electromagnetic, and you can actually feel. You see, the thing is lit up there, right? On one of the charts. When it becomes so lit up for great saints and sages, it shows up as an aura. It shows up like a saint-like, because this is the electromagnetic field that is being emanating, that is being picked up by the naked eye. For ordinary person, all of us have this, but we don't see it because it's not intensive. But for great saints and sages, it becomes so intensive that you can actually see with the naked eye. So this is the first aspect of meditation. It really strengthens our neurotransmitters, our chemical messengers. It relays that information beautifully. The second aspect of the brain which is impacted is actually a part which we call the cerebrum, which is the large section of our brain. It consists of two hemispheres, right? As I said earlier, the neurotransmitters transports information. But this brain part, that's the biggest part of the brain. You have the left side and the right side. Now, they have functions in the brain. Each one of them have their own function of the brain. Now, why is it that when we start practicing meditation, we are able to understand things better? It is because, as I said earlier, when the neurotransmitters are transmitting, the highways are fantastic, more pathways are forming, the gray matter in the brain starts increasing. If you don't do that, the gray matter starts shrinking. And parts of that brain, which is the cerebrum, which is both the left side and the right side, we see that, the left side of the brain controls the right side and vice versa. But they all have a function. Nature's built on this hardware things that could is very important for human life. This is part of evolution. So evolution has helped human beings. Parts of the brain started growing. It enabled us to develop language, right? No other species has language. Human beings have language, speech, the ability to analyze things, the ability to order things. That means discriminate between what is right and wrong, ability to read and write and do mathematical computation. We're probably the only species that, have discovered. I don't say that we created mathematics, because numbers were already present in our universe. We discovered numbers and the whole computational stuff, sequencing, logic, mathematics. We discovered it, right? So, and now we have artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence and, collective artificial intelligence. All this came from the human mind, because our brain nature has helped us evolve. Evolve means you see that the gray matter started expanding. The same thing, on the right hand side, creativity. We need parts of the brain for creativity, imagination, intuition, complete thinking, wholesome thinking, arts, appreciating arts and culture, the beauty of poetry, being able to, not always we need language, but there are things that we can understand without language. Non-verbal cues, rhythm, vibration, ability to daydream, visualize things in our brain, and the base of our emotions. So both sides of the brain has parts of the brain that controls various software from speech right up to emotions. If this part is the network is not very strong, parts of the brain is not going to work properly, or maybe even start shrinking. So you have difficulty with speech, analyzing, forgetfulness, you use, the emotion, the depression, all these things come in. And I see this among very elderly people, particularly as they age and they're lonely. You see this happening. And I tell them, get up and do something. And if you don't do something, you know, the brain is going to shut down. So it is really important that part of the mental wellness is actually to keep our brain active through meditation, introspection, contemplation, and reflection. So this is an integral part of this brain health. Now, I see this, as we practice meditation, you become active. As I said earlier in the part one, which is the neurotransmitters are widening its network. Somehow you have that energy. You say, okay, I'm going to do this. I want to read this. I want to explore this. So even though you age, you want to read, reflect, explore, you don't sit down and vegetate, right? And this is the beauty of that meditational steps that I'm talking about. Mahan, right up to the age of 80, right up to the day he attained Samadhi, he was very active. There's not one day he complained, right? So, yeah, the body could be sick. You sit down, relax, let the body rest, but your mind is continuously thinking about, what do I do next? How do I explore? So this is the first part of, there are 10 parts of the brain. But the most important part is actually our neurotransmitters, that the pathway that takes that flow of that information that helps us build this left and the right. Now, there is an interconnection between both those hemispheres. Yes, there are certain regions of the brain that control speech and some emotions. But when the interconnection is very strong, it cross-pollinate both. The information flow becomes so seamlessly integrated, and that becomes the seat of creativity, the ability to step up and understand more subtle parts of our own beingness, our own self, and discovering the reality of our universe. And this is what this great Mahan's teachings taught me, that it actually helps the brain from a physiological perspective. It helps build the gray matter. It reduces the brain decline. It increases the neuroplasticity of the brain. It increases the highways to connect things within the brain. And when we do that, our brain helps us be calm, cool. That has got a bodily impact on us. Our health improves, our thinking improves, our emotional state improves. We become more inspired and have that can-do attitude. But if our brain is tired, and it starts shutting down, the whole body starts shutting down. So I'm going to, so again, I talk about how meditation strengthens the neural connectivity flow between, and I said aging diminishes their function. So, this meditation can slow the aging process. So this is the kind of thinking that I want to bring to all of you, that, I hope that you would spend a little bit more time every day. You cannot afford not to do it. So I said earlier that, this highway will start declining if we don't use it. Like any other highways in the world, if we don't use it, it starts diminishing. So my suggestion to all of y'all is that you cannot afford not to do it. Even if you feel lazy, even if you don't feel like doing it, when you see this picture, you say, look, I want to make sure that the highways are still, bright, and I've got to do something. Do your meditation, go for your walks, interact with people, volunteer. That's why we say introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, and service. When we volunteer our times, when we do altruistic things, there's a firing in our brain that takes place. This is how nature is built. Nature has built that caringness in us to look after ourselves and other people. And when we do that, you see that, we are rewarded by, a million folds. So I hope all of you all will, take this learnings today. If you are not intensifying your meditation, I hope it'll make you change. And as I go through this discussion over the next few weeks, going deeper into what happens in our brain when we practice meditation, the frontal lobe, the third eye, what happens to the brain and what do you experience? And when you do that, you will start saying, oh, wow, this is what Mahan said. This is what Guru mentioned. I can experience this. And when you experience this, you start intensifying, taking your meditation seriously. Sandosham to all of you.